you is writing his article. It's good jazz, it's dodging, it's back and forth, and it's really high quality. David was looking down, writing in his notebook, whenever the trumpet solo started, and all of a sudden, his head just snapped up, because this was different. The quality of this music was noticeably different than what had been playing before. The trumpet soloist was standing back at the back of the stage in the shadows, and as he played, he slowly started moving into the light toward the front of the stage. And David recognized that it was Wynton Marsalis, the most famous jazz musician on the planet at the time. The audience hadn't really gotten it yet, but as Marsalis came forward, little by little, the audience started recognizing, oh, wait a minute. We are in a small venue with one of the greatest jazz players of all time. And all of a sudden, this show took on new meaning. Now think about what Marsalis has done here. He did what a lot of great talents have done. Jerry Seinfeld is known for this. I happened to be at a small little dance club in Austin, Texas, when Garth Brooks all of a sudden showed up on this tiny little stage, and for 2 hours they locked the doors, and we were two-stepping, Western dancing to Garth Brooks playing all his great stuff. These are individuals who go back to do something just for the love of it. They do it to test out new material. They become novices again, because for Marsalis, he had not played with these other musicians before. This was not the carefully curated environment that he was used to. He was trying things out. He was improvising. He had to constantly be listening intently to what these other jazz artists were playing on the stage, because he wasn't leading the band. He was following and then leading some, and then back to following. Marsalis was doing what we will call the second element of curiosity. He was asking himself, what can I learn here? What can I learn here? When we are faced with something that shocks our nervous system, it raises our stress response, our first thing that we can say is, yes, this is my new reality, and what do I go from here? A great second question to ask ourselves is, what can I learn here? Because it takes our curiosity to the next level. Here is Marsalis wanting to learn in an environment, and he's a great template for what we do. I had to learn that in 2009 after the Great Recession, when I was working at UBS. I was managing part of the private bank there, and we almost went out of business in 2008. Merrill Lynch did, Bear Stearns did, Lehman Brothers did. UBS was close. And so in early 2009, they called all of us, people like me, to New York, and senior leaders came in, and they put on us these huge, big, massive goals. Now, looking back on it, I can just see they were trying to stay in business. But it was almost as if the Great Recession had not happened. They had taken how well everything was before the Great Financial Crisis and raised it 10 or 12% and said, you have to hit that number. And they said, oh, by the way, there are a lot of good managers out of work right now, so if you can't hit that number, we'll find someone who will. The night I was at dinner with all my colleagues, and we were miserable. I could tell by the conversation around the table. We were all drinking a little too much. We were all laughing a little too hard. I knew that everyone at that table had their resumes out looking for their next position. Everyone except me. Because I had just moved my family 2 times in 3 years. And those moves had not been great on a couple of my kids. If I'm honest, those moves had not been great on my marriage. And so I pretty much knew if I was going to try to move them again this quickly, I would probably be moving by myself. I staggered back to my hotel, and I went into the bathroom, turned on the light, and leaned on the counter and just looked at myself in the mirror. I said audibly, "How did you get here?" And then, from way back here, a memory came forward of a conversation I'd had with a spiritual mentor about 10 years earlier, who said, whenever you face crisis in your life, why not try asking yourself, what can I learn here? And so I looked at myself and I asked the question that came to make all the difference. What could I learn here? I immediately felt pressure lift off me, and I went to bed and slept like a baby that night. I got up the next morning and I went to the meetings, and what had sounded the day before like senior management trying to cram chores down my throat, today sounded more like senior leaders trying to share ideas that might possibly work in our offices. It changed my mindset enough. I got on the plane, went back to Austin, and I called our team together in our office, and we sat down, and the stress was palpable. These were financial advisors, financial planners, who had watched their clients' net worth drop so dramatically, and they didn't know what the future was. They didn't know that was coming, but they still felt the guilt and the strange nature of all of that. They were paralyzed. And then, when I came in and said, oh, by the way, here are these huge goals that senior leadership says we have to meet, you could cut the stress in the room like a knife. You could cut the stress with a knife. And then we said, whoa, okay, let's just let all that go for a minute. What can we learn here? Why did you get in this business in the first place? We started going around the room. And at first people said, I don't want to talk about that. Our clients are now in the market, 56%. And we said, okay, but why did you get in this business in the first place? And people started talking about wanting to help families educate their children, wanting to help families take care of their aged parents in a respectful way. Little by little, people started talking about what we could learn from this. And the biggest thing that we learned in that room that day was that we were trying to control all things that were outside of our control. We could not control if a client would fire us or not. We could not control if a potential new client would say yes or not. We could not control if the market would continue to keep falling or if it would turn around and recover. We could not control if the company we worked with was going to go out of business. None of that we could control, but that was the center of our stress. What we could control was I can pick up the phone and I can call a client. I can actually ask the question that we did not want to ask, how are you doing in the middle of all this? We could absorb the blowback of the answer that we thought would be coming with empathy. We could actively listen. We could double our research. We could say, yes, our clients' financial plans have blown up, but this is their new reality. We will update their financial plan to show them a potential pathway forward. So they're just not sitting there in uncertainty. And so we identified 5 controllable things. And that became the difference between success or failure on a certain day. It was not, were we headed toward the goals? It was not, is the market recovering? Did we do 5 controllable things today? If yes, today's a success. If no, it's a success because we learned why not, and we'll do it and we'll try again tomorrow. And then a funny thing happened 18 months later. The guy called me and he said, hey Mike, have you seen the office rankings lately? And I said, Wayne, why are you calling me? You know I don't look at stressful stuff like that anymore. 5 controllable items. That is my entire life right there. 5 controllable things, nothing else. And Wayne said, you ought to go take a look at it. So I went to my office, I pulled up the office rankings, and to our shock, our office was the #1 office in the entire global financial system. And no one was more surprised than we were. because we had just been focusing on 5 controllable items. Another crazy thing that happened along that path, after we just decided to focus on those controllables, 2 weeks later, people started smiling again. A month later, our stress levels had plummeted to close to 0. But still, 18 months later, we had surpassed the big impossible goals that senior leadership had put on us. Now, to be fair, we were the beneficiaries of a financial market system that recovered faster than anybody had anticipated. But that was a wind at everyone's back. That was something that every office had the advantage of. Our team was just more in a position to take advantage of the recovery because we had said, what could we possibly learn from this in the middle of crisis, in the middle of pain, when it is hardest to say what we can learn about. I want to say again, this is not easy, but it is oh so rewarding. We get curious, our nervous system lets go of those things that we wanted to be true but no longer exist, and it puts us in the best position for any kind of recovery and opportunity going forward. So I'd like for us to talk about that for another 2 minutes. Would you tell your partner or a new partner, if you want to pick one, tell about a time when you said, what can I learn here? Or a time when you should have said, what can I learn here?